Coulthard, Coulthard in the wall.
David Coulthard into the wall, they'll stop the race.
They'll have to red flag
this. Terrible. Look, this is quite appalling. This is the worst start for a Grand Prix that I have ever seen in the whole of my life.
The drivers lined up on the grid as the engines roared to life. Little did they know that this race would go down in history as one of the deadliest and most catastrophic Grand Prix events ever. In my entire life, I do not think I have ever seen anything like this. Murray Walker, a legendary figure in the commentary scene, was speechless after witnessing what he had just witnessed. The Belgian Grand Prix of 1998 is, in my opinion, one of the most dramatic races in Formula One history, if not the most dramatic. This race had it all: a 13-car pileup, breathtaking crashes, a real pit lane brawl between Schumacher and his rival, and a maiden victory for one of the growing underdogs in the sport. Without warning, I will continue to provide you with content after that. So, would you make sure to subscribe if you are enjoying it? Right from the beginning, qualifying was unique. Perfectly dry and cool conditions prevailed on the track on Saturday, with a thrilling race between Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard's McLaren taking centre stage. Häkkinen would cut another couple of tenths off each time Coulthard accelerated. However, Häkkinen ultimately grabbed pole position by a tenth of a second, guaranteeing McLaren's front row alongside Coulthard. In the meantime, Damon Hill also had an outstanding qualifying run, finishing in P3, ahead of P4 and P5 places held by Michael Schumacher and Eddie Irvine. A waved yellow flag incident cast doubt on Schumacher's best time, and Hill ultimately edged him out by a slender margin. Even among the leading competitors, there were other drivers who faced difficulties. Despite nearly totaling his Williams the day before, Jacques Villeneuve secured a very respectable 6th position on the grid. However, Mika Salo was not as lucky, as he crashed his arrows in qualifying. It proved to be an exciting and unpredictable race day. It started to rain early on Saturday morning, despite the forecast calling for warm, dry weather. Häkkinen started off strong when the lights went out, but Coulthard found it difficult to get going. Conversely, Villeneuve had surged forward to contend with Häkkinen for the lead. Michael Schumacher was able to move up to P3 as Hill, who was suffering from excessive wheel spin, had dropped back to roughly 7th from 3rd. Though, for the most part, the front runners had gotten away with it. The real chouse was going to happen behind them. It was almost impossible to see what precisely happened at the time due to the spray from the cars. However, on the run-up to Io Ruge, it was thought that Irvine made contact with Coulthard, spinning the McLaren across the midfield and causing a significant crash into a concrete barrier. When the drivers behind attempted to avoid an approaching missile, it was a terrifying sight to watch the cars spin across the track in that manner. Because their cars were so completely wrecked, drivers like Barrichello, Rosset, Panis and Salo would not be able to make the restart. Fortunately, none of the drivers suffered life-threatening injuries. Cleaning up the debris and preparing the backup cars for a restart took close to an hour. Coulthard took the spare McLaren and Irvine took Schumacher's spare car. By skillfully positioning his car to avoid the mayhem, Jordan's Ralf Schumacher was the only one to survive the initial chaos unscathed. Just 18 drivers were in the starting grid as the cars prepared for the restart. Hill took advantage of the restarts to make up for his earlier bad start. Once again, Hill made the perfect move, passing both McLarens as they circled La Source. While Hill was in dreamland, Häkkinen would have to endure quite the nightmare. Stuck and facing the wrong direction, his McLaren whirled around in a full circle as he pulled out of La Source. As Johnny Herbert's Sauber crashed into him, all he could do was stare helplessly. The safety car had to step in because both drivers had immediately pulled out of the race. This time, at least, the race would not be stopped. Coulthard had a difficult first lap, losing control and crashing into the gravel trap after making contact with Alexander Wurz's Benetton, which only made things worse for McLaren. Luckily, he was able to get back into the race at the back of the group. The order of the top 10 was Hill, Michael Schumacher, Irvine Alesi Villeneuve, Frentzen, Ralf Schumacher, Fisichella Den Braven, and Verstappen, with the safety car leading the group. However, Coulthard was a little miffed about the state of affairs and insisted that the safety car return. His gut feelings would turn out to be accurate. Michael increased his lead over teammate Damon Hill to nearly 30 seconds by lap 24, while Ralf Schumacher had closed the gap to just 10 seconds. Michael was also on the verge of colliding with De La Rosa on this exact lap. And as those of you who are aware, sometimes foreshadowing does work. As he got closer to Coulthard, who was about to be lapped, Schumacher became agitated and indicated that the McLaren was in the way of him. His impatience would turn into full-boiled anger. As Schumacher attempted to pass Coulthard on lap 26, the Scotsman was unluckily hit by Schumacher's right front wheel. The Germans had become increasingly frustrated in these dangerous conditions. Michael was out of the race, but both cars hobbled on. It all vanished in an instant. He had been leading the race by more than 30 seconds and was well on his way to securing his driver's title. When he returned to the pit, he was so furious that he threw his steering wheel at his mechanic, got out of the vehicle and went directly to the McLaren garage. Still wearing his helmet, he went up to Coulthard. He was certain that Coulthard was the cause of whatever had occurred on the track. It was quite the heated exchange, I must say. Afterwards, Coulthard recalled, Schumacher was furious and accused him of some pretty serious offences. We are talking about charges like trying to kill me. The two drivers became so heated that the Ferrari and McLaren crews had to intervene and physically separate them. It was real drama now. There was a feeling Ralph might defy the team's directives despite them, given that he was suing Jordan to get out of his contract, so he could play for Williams the following season. Eddie Irvine's Ferrari clipped a curb and spun off the track into the gravel, ending his race as well. Now, both Ferraris were also out. Alesi was trying to exert some pressure from behind, but Ralph was following the team's instructions with dedication. Even though Jan Magnussen was 2 laps behind the leaders, he was still able to secure a crucial point for Prost. Franzen and Diniz were ultimately unable to keep up with the leading trio. Slow and steady comes 6th in the race, after a thrilling 1-2 finish and a historic victory for Jordan. Damon Hill celebrated the race's conclusion on lap 44. It was their first ever Grand Prix victory. A now famous jig around the paddock revealed Eddie Jordan's happiness. Like his brother's rage earlier in the McLaren garage, Schumacher's frustration was evident. He was denied a possible first win. And even though he sprayed champagne and waved his cap during the festivities, he still felt cheated. He was so angry that he stopped Jordan's post-race celebrations and said that Ralph would never drive for Jordan again. In case you were curious, the answer is that he did indeed act upon that threat. Before departing the team to spend 6 years at Williams, Ralph would secure one last podium for Jordan at Monza. Michael lost to Häkkinen in the championship race, preventing him from winning a 3rd world title. If he had prevailed at Spa, he would have led by 6 points instead of 4, heading into the race for the championship at Suzuka. Ultimately, only 8 of the 22 cars would complete the race, with 13 of the 14 DNFs. Due to some kind of collision or damage, cars had to bow out of the race. Only Esteban Tuero in the Minardi was able to retire from competition due to a mechanical issue. He had fought, and boy would he have been grateful to his angels of protection for that. Consequently, Spa 1998 had significant consequences for the Drivers' Championship in addition to being a gift from the F1 screenwriters. Due in large part to the FIA's current preference to cancel races after 2 wet laps, I highly doubt we will ever see a race like this one again.